I just say a few words of introduction. Of course, you have said the most important thing and how we met, and we really got interested in the same kind of topic, and we were used to fight together at the ERC for projects. Well, and we didn't always win, as you know, but for projects that involve cultural analysis, data, and popular culture. And this is something we are really interested in. And then I asked so Max to be one of our advisors for this project when I was building it. And he actually also helped me to formulate especially the whole part about cultural data, and also how it's going to be based also on the productions of ordinary people on the internet. So this was something where we really care about. So I just wanted to say I'm grateful to him, and I will say more about the project and why it really matters that we work together. What I wanted to say on a more concrete level is that we are all on Zoom because actually I really envy you to be at this table with your whole team, because it has not proven possible for me because I have two of the researchers, so Alexandra and Theo, who is here on the Zoom, but who cannot, who are COVID either suspect or already here. I don't know yet. So we are completely decimated, and Alexandre cannot even be on Zoom because he's waiting at a lab, because it's very difficult. I don't know if it's the case here, but to get a test, you have to wait for like one whole day. So he's spending his day waiting to be tested, so he cannot be with us. And so so I have only, but this is very important, I have Pauline here and Theo and Sylvie, but not everyone. So I do hope we will have further opportunities to discuss, so the whole team can be with us. This was the only point I wanted to make, and now I think the introductions are in order.
Yes, maybe you want to start in this room, Mark?
Yes, hello, I'm Mark, so I'm under the Humanities Institute in here, but so my background is actually semiotics, and currently I deal with my topic is like studying the cultural other from like cultural data analytics perspective, and see how I could approach this question that way. This is shortly me.
Hello, my name is Antonina, and my background is in arts and educational technology, and here my project is revolving around the idea to merge together cultural analytics, art education, and educational technology.
Hello, Tilman Ohm. I'm a first-year PhD student and research fellow at CUDAN. I have also an artistic background, and I'm trying to find ways to algorithmically curate art collections.
Hi, I am Mar. I'm also artist background, but also computer science, and my PhD is about latent space navigation and exploration through interactive installations, means I'm doing practice space in the BFM, the Baltic Media School. Yeah, I'm researching into it.
Hello, I'm Andres. I'm a computational linguist of sorts, I guess. I use large corpora, but also experiments to study language evolution. But here at CUDAN, I'm also hoping to apply these methods to data other than language, so cultural data.
Hey, my name is Jan. I'm second-year PhD student here in Studies of Culture. My background is in UX design and user research. Now I'm interested in digital methods studying social medias. and specifically self-representation and communication online.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Marilise. I'm project coordinator for CUDAN.
Hi, my name is Hanna. I'm a PhD student, media studies, and my focus is on data-related innovations in policy media organizations.
Mila.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm also part of CUDAN group, but I'm currently in Helsinki. I'm a PhD. No, I'm actually I'm already postdoc. Sorry. Time flies. So I'm a postdoc, and my background is in cultural history. I'm interested in studying circulation of knowledge, and currently I'm working on kind of like pseudo-historical discussions in the Russian language internet concerning medieval history.
Vione.
Hi everyone, I'm also part of CUDAN, also a postdoctoral fellow. I work mostly with quantitative data about creative and cultural industries with a focus on cinema and also currently focus on gender. And I do a lot of industry-facing projects.
Mm-hmm. Indrek?
Yeah, hello. I'm a media innovation professor at Tallinn University, and I combine cultural semiotics and evolutionary economics to make sense of how media changes and is innovated.
Okay, thank you very much. Binikita, you want to say a word? Who you are? He doesn't. Okay, can't hear us. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, certainly. I'm sorry. I have a lack of internet connection. So my background is quantitative methods of network modeling. And during my PhD last 4 years, I'm trying to implement that into the industry applications. And unfortunately, although we have some success, I might say that network modeling is more relevant to the scientific field, as well as you do for cultural data analytics. So I'm really interested to see other applications apart from industrial methods, and I'm looking forward to hear what you're currently working on.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we have Pauline.
Sorry, hi everyone. My name is Pauline Blisten. I'm based in Paris. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow with Sandra Laugier at the DEMOSERIES project. I have a background in political science. I did my PhD in philosophy with Sandra. My PhD was on the production of spy TV shows, and especially the collaboration between professionals from the intelligence world and professionals in the entertainment industry, both in France and the US. And I guess when it comes to the DEMOSERIES project and in regards to the possible collaboration with your project, I think we have a lot to learn from each other, especially when it comes to establishing an interdisciplinary dialogue between cultural studies, media studies, philosophy, but also regarding the possible methods that we can use to analyze such TV series, and especially analyzing the reception and using a bit of data and bug collection when it comes to analyzing the reception of such TV series. So I guess it's an open discussion, and again, I'm very excited to be part of this collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Theo.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick right now. So my background is in cultural history, and I'm a research assistant at ERC DEMOSERIES. My master degree was dealing with superheroes comics and the representation of war in US fiction and culture. and I'm really looking forward to work with you. I see you got a lot of people specialized in art data survey and studies, and Alexandre, which is not here, is very much interested in art data collection. So I'm looking forward to work with you.
Thank you very much. I should add, there's another person of our group which is currently missing, whose name is Daniel Chavez. He just recovered from COVID-19. He's stuck in the Philippines, and right now at this moment he is doing a test run of his PhD defense, which should be over in the next couple of minutes, and then he will join us. And so maybe I just introduce what he's doing. He's doing that with his advisor in the UK. So what he's doing is using deep learning to basically watch movies. So he tries to teach the computer how to watch movies, and he did so with the whole BBC archive, basically creating a kind of, and there's a bridge to what Tilman Ohm does, kind of algorithmic curation of TV shows. And so that is obviously related and very useful also within this circumstance. There is another person other than Sandra in the chat who has not spoken up yet, whose name I don't see. So
Sylvie Alouche.
Ah, okay, yes, okay. Hi, Sylvie. You want to say hi?
Le son.
Ah, the mic doesn't work.
Sylvie? On t'entend pas, il faut que tu mettes
I can do it. Yeah, I can unmute. Just give me a
Can
second.
you, yes,
Yes,
can you
now I
hear
can
me
hear
now? Okay.
Voilà, c'est bon, c'est bon.
So I'm Sylvie Alouche. I'm a postdoc philosopher in Sandra's project, DEMOSERIES. So I did my PhD on philosophical stakes of the technological modification of the human body in science fiction. And from there, I developed two strands of research. So what we nowadays call transhumanism. And the other side is generally philosophy of fiction, and more specifically philosophy of series, TV shows. I have been working with Sandra, it has been like 10 years now. We have developed more than 10 years. And so I did my PhD with her. And we developed, I don't know if you had time to talk about that, but from 2009, we developed an annual conference on TV shows. And so DEMOSERIES is in the continuity of this. And yeah, that's all for the moment. And I'm in Paris, as you might have seen before, with the buildings.
It doesn't show.
No, yeah, maybe later.
Thank you very much. So now we got everybody, I guess. So maybe Sandra, you want to give us a little introduction of the project and what you're doing, or whatever talk you want to talk about.
Yeah, okay. I really want to present you the project, although you have said already very the main topic, but I want to present it and also maybe explain how it happened, because we really built this project together, also with Pauline, who had herself presented and applied to a call from the French CNRS after the terrorist attacks in France in 2015, and this is also when we really began to work together. And then Sylvie said we have been working together a lot since many years on TV shows more generally. So it's also really nice to be able to pursue also some collaboration. And as you say, an ERC project is very focused on the specific topic. So you are very lucky because you have a very large, diverse team on various subjects, and I think it's really nice. I am lucky too, but in a different way, because I have to focus on this subject, which is the subject of security series and democracy. I have been working a lot. You mentioned the Buffy, the Vampire Slayer book, but I also published a book called Nos vies en série, which is about the importance, the cultural importance of TV shows. And I really want to start from that because this has been maybe a very big part of my life since many years, to support the idea of, TV shows being an important part of not only of popular culture, which is obvious, but of culture in general, and also of philosophical production in itself. And when I wrote this project, and as you understand from listening to the parts, the members of the team, it's really first philosophy focused. It's really to show the philosophical and ethical and political importance of contemporary TV shows. And the way to show this importance is really a two-way thing. First, to actually show the political, ethical content of TV shows in general. And for this, I use a lot the work of Stanley Cavell, who is an American philosopher who has written a lot on film, on Hollywood film, on Hollywood popular film, not on TV at all, but he is the inspiration of the project because he is the one who maybe made the strongest claim about the philosophical and ethical import of film and of popular film. So my point is really about popular culture and how it really matters philosophically, ethically, and politically. But then and this is where I've been very lucky also to work with Pauline, because actually we found a wonderful, it's not an illustration, it's a kind of paradigm of series that really matter. And it's what we call security TV series. And it's a number, and it's a very central and important genre of TV shows, because it's a genre of series. Actually, we don't know exactly if it's a genre. We just had a conference about what is a genre in TV, so it's problematic. But there are obviously a big number of series that are describing what democratic regimes and their intelligence service and their agencies do when they are confronted with terrorist threats. And these shows are expanding, and the number of these shows has increased, and they have many viewers. So maybe the most famous TV shows right now are about this subject. I'm thinking of the French show Le Bureau des Légendes, but there was also before 24, or Homeland, or a number of Israeli shows that are very famous. I don't know if you watch all these shows, but it's obviously a very central theme. And even if the past month, the COVID crisis has been, really at the front scene, obviously in France, for example, terrorist attacks are a major subject. I don't know if you heard about the attack that happened last week in France, and it's obviously a very present concern, and intelligence and policy are very central in the fight against terrorism. But our thesis, and Pauline is going to say more about that, the main thesis of the project is that these shows contribute to the fight against terrorism. So it's a huge claim, and it is something that, you know, it's maybe against the common idea that TV shows are only about entertainment and make and are also directed to a public that is more or less incompetent and ignorant. But the point, and this is why I was so happy that the proposal worked, because it was really a claim to say that these series, these security TV series, provide shared cultural references concerning the current security environment. And so they both constitute a kind of window, as you say, also a mirror of society, but also a window into an aspect of politics that is usually hidden and mysterious. And this is espionage, intelligence, and so on. But I think this is very obvious claim, but the other claim would be that these security TV series are also working and changing the opinions, the knowledge of the public. And so also because, and this was the subject of Pauline's early work, they are made in cooperation with defense and intelligence actors. So we obviously need to know first if these shows are actually a mirror of reality, the kind of realism they propose, they exhibit, but also the kind of influence they can have in constituting a public opinion and transmitting and sharing ideas and values, and also creating awareness of terrorists, but also other threats like of course, the health, the threat on the sanitary threats now, the environmental threat. Actually, we are also interested in the fact that all these many shows are somehow informing, alerting, but also transmitting ideas about various threats. And so this is this is really the main the main idea. And of course, from the start, we needed many different competences. And as you see, we have moral and political philosophers in the team. Pauline is both in political science and political philosophy. Sylvie is in literature. Alexandre, who is not there, is doing a sociological field work with the audience. We also have a partnership with what is called INA, which is the French Institute of Audiovisual Media, so audio and visual media, and they are providing us with all kinds of data. We are, of course, very interested in how we can use this data. And of course, since, as you see, the team is more specialized in qualitative aspects of research, we are, of course, and this is something that I have been discussing very early with Max. We also need to know what is possible in terms of analysis of images and of course of dialogues and so on, and how these cultural data can help us somehow, but also, of course, help us discover new things about this corpus of TV shows. Of course, cultural studies scholars have already examined TV shows. You have the whole tradition from Stuart Hall, redefinition of culture as a set of practice and an analysis of television discourse. But for us, this analysis of shows as discourse, and I'm sure you agree, is obviously not enough. We really need an analysis of images, of scenes, and this is something that really needs cultural data analysis. We, for example, need to have tools to understand, if there are some kind of typical paradigmatic scenes or exchanges that appear in these shows, and the kind of moral or political discussion, how if they have some kind of recurrent features. So this is something that really matters a lot to us, also because we have access, because we have this partnership with this institute. And of course, there is also the whole matter of the reception. We are not doing anything in neuroscience in this project, and this is a completely deliberate choice because we cannot go there, and we've also because we think it's much more promising to analyze and understand the reception from what is actually happening in the world, in society, and everything that is written online about these shows, everything that, all the reactions, the tweets and so on by real people. So this is really also a theoretical stand. So this is why we we don't go in the cognitive direction, but we are of course very dependent also on cultural analysis, and especially for the project as it is, because for us we really want to know how the viewers explore reality through fiction, and also we really want to understand how the ideas, the visions of the world, the values circulate in the general, in the public, and obviously this is also something for, and we need data science and quantitative discourse and image and art, and some of you are very learned in that. So for the project, we also need the crowdsourced critical thought analysis. We would need also some very careful analysis of not only of images and dialogue, but also narrative itself, and the analysis of narrative and characters is very central. And we really want to invent new tools with you about to explore the way narratives and so tropes are actually helping building the reception of these shows. So this is really a very this is really a summary. I don't get into the project and how it works very deeply, because I would prefer to maybe to answer the questions and to discuss with you about that. But I would like to maybe ask Pauline to say a little more, to tell a little more about how the project itself grew from your field work with showrunners, and how, and the context also, the security and terrorism context, and also why it really means to redefine the whole matter of realism, because realism in our projects is not only an aesthetic effect, it's really also about showing what reality is, but also about try to transform reality. So it's a very, it is a kind of maybe big ambition, but I think this is why we chose this specific genre of TV shows. And then, so maybe Pauline, you can present this aspect, and Sylvie will tell more about what we need as tools for aesthetic and analysis of images. So I think it's better that we go on with you, and then we have a discussion afterwards, if it's okay.
Yes, sure.
Good.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Yeah, if you don't mind, because I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go. I'm supposed to give a talk in a few hours and I have to get ready. So I'm very sorry, I'm not going to be able to attend the whole meeting. So I guess that's why Sandra wants me to talk now. Just very quickly, and to follow up on what Sandra just said, I guess I should probably say I'm a little bit less enthusiastic than Sandra when it comes to seeing these TV series as a way to fight against terrorism, especially because this topic, I think, should be approached very carefully, given the current context of increased collaboration between security professionals and industry professionals in order to make these shows more so-called realistic. And also, I mean, just seeing these shows as a way to fight against terrorism or to teach spectators about, you know, what is terrorism and what should the fight against terrorism look like, would also be a way to normalize the discourse of security professionals. I know that's not what you're saying, Sandra, but I just wanted to make that clear. We're not just crazy propagandists saying that everything is normal, and we're approaching this topic very carefully and critically. So when it comes to the collaboration between security professionals and industry professionals, I think this is definitely one of the biggest change when it comes to the production of TV series throughout the so-called democratic world. Since the 90s in the US, the CIA has established a liaison office, which is of course a sort of continuity of what is happening between security professionals and Hollywood since World War II. The same is happening in France. The same has happened in the UK. The same sort of collaboration is also in the process of being established in Germany. And I'm pretty sure, I'm being very careful here because I need to do some field work, but I'm pretty sure we can find the same kind of collaboration in Denmark and surely in Israel. So that was actually one of the aim of my postdoctoral research fellow, was to go to Israel and to find out how security professionals, intelligence professionals, and the sort of booming TV series industry is sort of inheriting that kind of framework of increased collaboration And obviously I cannot go to Israel, so I'm trying to refocus my attention on the French case at the moment. Just to say two very important points, I think, which have emerged from our current discussion within the project. So first of all, the notion of security, we approach it from a constructivist lens. So basically decided that reality and fiction are not opposed, but they are co-constitutive. And also in line with, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but debates within security studies and especially critical security studies. Also, I think one important point here is to say that is, of course, when we started thinking about the project, security was all about terrorism. Especially in France, and although back then we were already, aware of the fact that it wasn't only about terrorism, now we are trying to think of, new ways to sort of enlarge this notion of threats, especially in the current context. So I think what is very interesting when it comes to the production of TV series in the coming years is to see how COVID-19, of course, will play out in the new productions that are to come. And just one very quick point about this notion of realism that Sandra has mentioned. I think one starting point of this project from a philosophical perspective was to sort of try to move away from a very classic, ordinary understanding of realism as a simple resemblance or correspondence with reality, and trying to sort of complexify this idea that realism is actually ubiquitous when it comes to such TV shows. In the production phase, I said that security professionals, but also industry professionals, justify their collaboration using this notion of realism, but also the multiplication of reality effects in TV series themselves, and this sort of the way the security TV series try to reformulate what is happening in the real, almost in real time nowadays, which is sometimes a bit scary. And also in the reception, and I guess this is where we could probably learn many things from you, because we're also interested in the way spectators understand these shows, using two different kinds of studies here. The first kind is a very classic semi-structured interviews with focus groups. The second set of data is, Sandra has mentioned it, what I call bulk collection, but it's not obviously not bulk collection, but the collection of data on Twitter, on other social media, to sort of understand the discussion online about these shows, discussions that sometimes happen in real time as people are watching these shows. And I guess here we could really benefit from the sort of methods that are being used in media studies, cultural studies, to sort of map these ideas. And so realism from production to the reception of these TV series, but this is still a work in progress. And of course, we are very, very happy to hear your thoughts about the whole thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I don't believe I'm going to stop terrorism with my ERC project. I'm sorry, it was a little caricatural, but our project is also really about the educational power of image. And I think this is and of images and of narratives and of the cultural products. And I think this is really something that we can work on, even if we are not. We have to lower our ambitions about bringing peace to the world.
Yes, thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. And so I think there is, in a very structured way, you gave us some, a number of segues, which maybe to spark the discussion, I would like to sort of repeat just a bunch of words, which is,
okay.
You had this idea of genre, like what is a genre anyway? I mean, we are very, very, very interested in what came out of your conference, I guess.
Yeah.
Then you talk about the ethics and also the responsibility on behalf of the people who are involved in these kind of shows. And then also this question of bias, which is quite interesting. So this realism mirrors of society thing, like one thing that comes to mind of an artist, or in my case is historical paintings, right? Like in how much are history paintings actually realistic? Like the death of Marat, is that how he was in the bathtub, right? and so TV series as that kind of extension of that kind of genre, that was the word. And then the question is obviously, you also talked a little bit about like what could the data be? And you mentioned the word tropes, which like my suggestion, like the thing that I actually often comes to my mind when I see qualitative projects about narrative and in particular TV shows and cinema movies is things like TV tropes or fandom websites where there is this huge amount of material that is produced by sort of a broader audience, obviously with the same biases as Wikipedia, too many men. But nevertheless, there's a kind of large amount of material that is sort of like coincident with that. And then obviously the question is methods, which feeds into your last points regarding this kind of, you know, surveys versus bulk data collection, like what are the kind of overlapping methods? And so basically, with that summary, maybe we can open the discussion to everybody. We could sort of, one strategy would be to sort of look at these points systematically over the next, I think, we have basically an hour to go. Or the other thing we can do is basically just open it up and randomly see where it goes, which I'm always open for that. But I just I wanted to put this beforehand, so we have a kind of like there's a whole bouquet of things we can sort of discuss in this, and so. But maybe some of my fellows want to speak to where they think they are sort of immediately related to what you're actually doing and what you're proposing. Like maybe they have their 50 cents of like what they could imagine could be done or couldn't be done looking at such material. And so I don't want to push people, but maybe Daniel, you have some thoughts about this whole project.
Just also Sylvie had wanted to present what.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. Sorry. Yes.
Or maybe we can have this after a first discussion. It's really as you like, actually. I would also like to answer to you about genre. So I don't know, Sylvie, maybe we have a first discussion and then you present, or what?
What, do you hear me first?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. No, because before I had problems with Zoom, but now
it seems to be working.
So in the project, in the work package I'm working on is the one which is related to content analysis. So we have 3 work packages. To make it short, the one of Pauline is more about the production of TV shows. I'm working on the content, and we also have a work package on reception. We are used to, so I told you we worked already with Sandra for many years, and it's true that we mainly conducted traditional philosophical research. It means something when you do philosophy with TV series, but we used traditional tools of content analysis applied to fictional content. So we would be very interested indeed to work with you and with your tools. I have actually, it can open up the discussion because I had mainly a question I didn't quite get. So I understand, but maybe I didn't understand properly, that I feel that you're mainly focused on developing tools that could be used by us. But do you have a corpus? Do you have a topic, a specific topic on which you're working on? Or could you be interested as using our topic as kind of an experimental field for your tools of analysis?
Maybe I should say some words to this. So we're not a digital humanities service institution that builds tools for the people. We are basically right now in this room 6 PhD students and 5 postdocs. And as in your case, the goal of those is to write 3 papers or a monograph in co-authorship. The point is we want to work towards the understanding of cultural data, cultural dynamics, cultural structure, as you have seen, a rather broad variety of aspects, because we think there is some common ground. A common ground is in part sort of established or co-constituted by Estonia being sort of a hotbed of cultural semiotics, which actually has quite some resonance with what's called complexity science. So the idea is to actually develop an understanding. This does not mean we are not interested in tools and applications, say in industry, for example. Like, for example, if we analyze news data over large amounts of time, both in text, in radio, spoken word, but all the audiovisual, we obviously are interested, what is the structure, what is the dynamics we can look at, because this will actually determine what kind of tools can be built. So it's very much in line with what you're doing. We're also interested in understanding what is actually at hand, what are we looking at, what are the biases, and so on. So it's less about like building a map application where somebody else can put data in and gets a map out, but it's actually understanding the data in the process of mapping, in the process of sort of quantifying what's going on and so on. And obviously this almost always, no matter what you touch, requires domain expertise and computational, aesthetic and sort of quantitative expertise all at the same time. And it's sort of a historic opportunity to be able to do that across digital technology and education, the Baltic Film, Media, Communications and Art School, and the Humanities School in a way that is really open, because the people who have constructed this, like I was hired into this position, who have constructed this sort of configuration, constructed it in a way that in its multidisciplinarity, it's safe to say that it would never ever pass the European Research Council, because there is like different, not even panels, but actually different domains going on. And so in that sense, our contribution could be to sort of help build a better understanding. And but that doesn't mean obviously there's tools in both directions, right? Like we all come in with particular expertises, and so yeah, that's sort of like, I think a more clarifying kind of description of what we're doing, right? So yes.
Yes.
So the question would be, for example, what is the qualitatively, you can actually pick out some tropes, the shape of tropes in your TV series, but you could not exhaustively enumerate, for example, what kind of configurations of people on screen are actually there. We could look at every frame and actually answer that question. That is something we would be interested in doing.
Yeah.
Very good.
I just wanted to answer to your first question, Max, about this whole idea of genre, because we had a workshop, but we couldn't do a big Zoom workshop. It was a small and with few people, actually, given the condition. We were, it was in presence of the group and a few researchers, but we understood that we really need to extend this reflection on the genre, and I think we could work on this together, because this whole idea of genre is first something that is very typical of popular culture. Popular culture is really about genre. Of course, it's also about classic arts too, and we really would like maybe to, you know, confront the conception of genre in, well, history of painting and in contemporary popular culture. But what was very interesting for us in the discussion is that, of course, we cannot give criteria or definitions of genre, and this is obviously it never works. And it was more about what Wittgenstein calls family resemblance. And this is where it's very important to, I think, have this reflection of the kind of data analysis, because the genre is not defined by a specific kind of stories or subjects, but it's really about the, you know, style of situations, of dialogue, and also about this kind of also matrix for creating new shows, and so it's really something that is not easy to define at all, and that has to be, I think, informed by, you know, typical images, scenarios, or even characters. And so this is where this kind of, you know, big data analysis really comes in, I think, for this whole idea of genre. So I wanted to mention this and our first conclusions about the genre. And for example, we have this security TV genre, and there are some obvious examples like 24 Homeland, but actually you can include, you know, for example, this series on Chernobyl, which was very popular, HBO thing. Is it part of the genre or not? I think it's an interesting question, and the way we can decide something is part of, belongs of the genre or not, is also very, I think, very, very interesting, but it's completely open-ended, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is actually, I think this actually, we had similar conversations, right, over dinner in places. And I think that is a really crucial one. So there's a bridge, which I think is much more deep than just saying, oh, let's count how many, which is exactly this kind of thing. Like one issue about Wittgensteinian family resemblance, and for those who are less familiar with that, like Wittgenstein brings this example of chess and soccer in essence. Or, you know, an example that cognitive scientists like Eleanor Roche would bring would be dogs and cats. Like you can look at a poodle, even if it has the haircut of a lion, it's not a cat, and you can immediately recognize so, but there's this polymorphic similarity going on. So what's really important about this is all this deep learning, machine classification stuff, like recognizing faces, recognizing body poses, recognizing higher order concepts, such as genre, actually run on exactly this, like polymorphic resemblance. And so that is a really interesting thing. There's a number of sort of straightforward mathematical tools, but then the complex, complicated kind of thing of these neural networks actually applying them. And so a lot of these kind of machine learning research actually sort of runs on this in a very similar way as classic art history connoisseurship of Berenson, Warburg, and so on was running on this. Only back then it was like the art historian who was trained that way. And now we have machines who can be used to do similar things. And what's the second part of what you're saying, which is I think equally important also for everybody in the group, is that you have, if you look at the data in quantitative manners, you have these things where certain things fall into buckets. And like a classic example is Gothic cathedrals, right? So Notre Dame is very much in the bucket, right? It defines the bucket, much like sort of, you know, some random sparrow or pigeon from the street could be used to define the species of pigeon. And but then it becomes as you go out, right? Like Chartres and Amiens and Noyon and Rouen and whatever. There's churches which sort of are in core classification. They're still in the bucket. But then there's lots of churches, a larger number, that sort of semi-fits the bill, but not quite. They're also something different. They also look like Romanesque and still already Renaissance. And maybe somebody added some Baroque part. So you wouldn't actually mention them in a simple kind of description of what Gothic style is. And in a similar way, you have this kind of overlap between things which you may consider genre. And obviously, we have stretched it a little in the 20th century with music styles, with TV show styles and so on, or genres, in a way that we have this kind of, you know, there's these overlapping things, like what's Donna Summer? Is it actually R&B or is it rock, where these are the two buckets that exist in the racist division of American record stores? Or is it what it really is, a mixture of, like, you know, some colored woman singing plus some Italian dude doing some disco music to it, which, like, you know, it's neither here or there, but there's something in between going on. And it's perfectly valid at the same time. So there's that kind of thing can be both qualitatively analyzed, but also quantified. And from my perspective, I would say the quantification is really interesting because in the past, and you still get this kind of thing as a criticism, quantification is supposedly sort of hard, dry, without emotion, right? And sort of like biased and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is, it's actually bringing the overlap to the surface, right? As we analyze, we find all these overlaps, and we can now not only cluster and put in buckets, classify in a tree-like manner, as you see in the back here, but actually, at the end, we can ask ourselves, how does this leaf of the tree and this leaf of the tree and this leaf of the tree really overlap in a kind of confusion matrix? And obviously, people in entertainment production have seen this, and now, as you say, they produce these kind of design structure matrices to construct a TV show, right? Which is also something which can be traced back to the 50s and 40s, Fritz Zwicky's morphology, how to come up with an engine for an airplane, how to come up with different structures of kind of enterprises and stuff like that. And so there is an already running intertwining between qualitative and quantitative research over decades, which can be also enacted, I think, in the area of cultural history. And that's sort of like the idea where we could basically come together. So this family resemblance thing is something which we could analyze quantitatively, and also the overlap/confusion question may be an interesting way forward, which may be more surprising than we would think on the surface, because as we are going to the bookstore, the books and the TV shows and so on, they come in these kind of categorized genres, right? And so now the question is, like, can we understand how they all overlap, in essence?
Okay, thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah. Mila, yes, you're raising your hand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just think that this is a brilliant project that you are having, kind of like, and there rises kind of like a lot of kind of like interesting questions that I really think that we could find a lot of ways of collaborating, and I also think that aiming at ending terrorism is a good goal, although of course you always have to try, although the goal must, you know, is high. And you mentioned this film series Le Bureau, which was shown at least in Finland last spring, and it at least it kind of like saved my spring last year or this year. So it's a great thing. One of the things that I wanted to ask you regarding, in order to kind of like start this conversation on possibilities of collaboration, I would like to really go into very basics of your research, and maybe if you could tell more about the data that you are using and the sources, kind of like what specific film series you are focusing on. Do you have the whole kind of like the videos themselves, or do you have the transcripts of them, and do you have some kind of like metadata concerning them, and kind of like all this data that you have? It would be nice to hear. So I think after that it would be easier to discuss all the possibilities.
Okay, thank you. I will let Pauline, because then she has to go, answer that. And also Theo is working on the transcripts, so he will answer. So maybe Pauline, because I know then you have to split.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you, Mila, for the great question and for the enthusiasm regarding the project. So I guess, yes, we should have started with the beginning. We sort of assumed that you knew everything about the project. So the idea of the project is to propose the first sort of exhaustive analysis of TV series, and especially the 3 steps of a TV series, starting from the production phase, moving to the content, so the series itself, and then the final step would be the reception of the TV series, because we've noticed that, you know, in most studies regarding TV series, it's either one or the other. It's never the 3 phases. So we thought it was very interesting to sort of focus on a small amount of TV series and try to really understand the 3 steps and the whole process. So what we're using when we study the process, so regarding the production phase, so, you know, the whole what is happening before a TV series is actually released, I'm using a lot of interviews with showrunners, screenwriters, and this is what I've been doing in the PhD, and it was very useful. But now in the postdoc, I guess what I'm going to try to do, and of course it really depends on the goodwill of the people in the industry, is maybe to have access to different scripts, if it's possible, to see if there, you know, if there's been like changes at the request or not of security professionals. So also using interviews with the people involved from the security professionals side in the making of such TV series. Again, interviews, and moving to the second phase. I guess what we're trying to do, and this is what Sylvie was explaining earlier, is to really provide a sort of exhaustive analysis of the series and the images themselves. So very basic narrative content analysis using different kind of tools. And the third step, the reception of the TV series, is mostly about, as I was saying earlier, 2 sort of sets of data. The first one would be all the data that you can, you know, collect in focus groups and that kind of environment. And the second set of data would be what we call, but you know, we are sort of new to the whole like quantitative analysis, so I'm sorry if I'm not using the right words here, but everything that is sort of online, so all the sort of, you know, tweets, chats, as you were saying, Max, of course we're going to look at all these websites, what we call, you know, fan critiques, all the sort of online interactions, which sort of demonstrates this democratic conversation about these TV series. And yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know if Theo wants to add something, or maybe Sylvie. Yeah. And I'm sorry I have to go. Lovely talking to you. Looking forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Yes, I can add something, but more again, it's maybe more a question. I mean, regarding content analysis, there are mainly two parts, as Pauline suggested. There is the images analysis, and there is also the narrative analysis, which is mostly based on dialogues, on what happens to the characters. And if I understand, I mean, I can imagine what kind of, and I looked into the internet also, the kind of analysis which could be enhanced for the image analysis through using these the kind of tools you're working with. But I mean, I would be interested if you could develop about these the kind of work you do with images. But I can't see actually, so I would be very curious about the kind of work you do with stories, because as far as I can say from where I am, analyzing stories, analyzing the way characters relate to one another, in my experience for the moment, is mostly based on what as human beings we understand, and the subtleties of the relationship between the characters. And I see less at the moment how quantitative tools could be used. I need also to add that I'm a half postdoc, because I have another job at another university, and in this university, one of my topic is ethics of the internet, ethics of AI. So I'm also interested from another point of view of what you were talking about, Max, about the question of biases when you use this kind of tools is really interesting for me. And yes, it's not directly on DEMOSERIES topic, but I think it's also interesting to work on.
Question.
Yes, Anders.
So that's a very basic question. I'm just trying to understand what you guys are doing, because I'm a linguist and I don't have like a very good understanding of this stuff. So when you say content analysis, could you say what you mean by that? Because there is sort of content analysis in linguistics, so maybe you're doing the same thing, or maybe it's completely different. So if you could just say in very basic terms, how do you do it, and then maybe I'll
understand better. All right. So with DEMOSERIES, we are mainly focused on ethical questions. So to sum it up, you have stories in general. I have developed this argument in previous papers. Stories are, in a way, stage the use of freedom. They show characters who have to make choices, sometimes in very difficult situations. So
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you. I meant even more basic than that. So not what you study, but like what is the method? So so the linguistic example would be that the method is like you take a number of linguistic examples and then systematically annotate variables that apply to each example, and then analyze this resulting data set using statistical tools like regression models or whatever. Is that what you mean by content analysis, or is it something different?
No, it's less systematic than that. I mean, very basically, we watch the TV shows, and then you have situations which look interesting, and then if I talk about my own practice, I watch the TV shows. I look more precisely to some scenes. I try to have the whole story in my mind, and so it's very we don't use at the moment the kind of tools you're suggesting. I had between 2011 2013, I had the chance to have a Marie Curie fellowship at the University of Bristol. So on my other topic on human enhancement, and a part of the goal of this fellowship was to. So I was trained in using this kind of tools, but so I used them for the interviews I did, the kind of, I don't know if you know, for example, NVivo software. So I was trained in using that software to conduct some kind of more systematic analysis. But at the moment, I haven't used this kind of tools. So it's really like an empirical approach to the shows. So does it answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, so obviously you mean something different than I would mean, but thank you, that clarified this. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's one of the most important parts.
Me, Max, Theo wanted to answer on that.
Oh, yeah.
Working on the scripts
and Viuna raised her hand. Yes, we got you.
Yeah, yes. So it was part of the answer too. I started recently to find a way to collect, as we can say, the subtitles of different TV shows. For example, from making transcripts basically of a TV show, and I mean they're starting to we're starting to have like a database, you know, like with lots of words. Homeland is almost finished, for example, which will allow you to allow us to be able, you know, to find a specific word, maybe to do some statistical analysis on it. I don't know. I'm not. It's not my specialty, but I mean having all the subtitles, all the timestamp of an episode in a transcript can be useful, I think, in a lot of ways when we're making systemic studies, but also studies of content in a more narrative way.
Okay.
That's an interesting aspect because it means it's both textual as well as visual data, actually, and which is quite important because some of us deal with more textual and some with more visual, actually.
Yeah.
Viuna, you wanted to say something?
Hi again. So my comment is more about the overall project design. In here, you mentioned that you have those 3 stages of analysis. So you have the production, then you have the series themselves, and then the reception side. But based on my own previous research, I feel that a very important part is missing, which is the way those cultural products reach the audiences after they are produced. So in cinema studies, and for my doctoral degree, I most looked at a theatrical distribution. There you would have those other 2 stages of distribution and exhibition, basically asking that, okay, so once the product is produced, how then it reaches the audiences. And in cinema studies, of course, the 2 stages are more separate because you might have a distribution company that then has contact with exhibition theaters, for instance, if you're looking at theatrical, or online streaming services, for instance. And you could study those separately. For TV, of course, it's maybe more connected, where you would have a distributor that is also the TV station that streams or that shows the series on TV, or if it's also a separate deal made with online distributors, you might then look at that as well. So I feel that, at least from my experience, the collaboration from me personally could be looking at those industrial relationships as well through more quantitative analysis, really tracing who are distributing those TV series, where do they go, and what's happening there in terms of circulation. And I know that Mila is also looking at circulation of knowledge. That's of course different circulation, but I think that you could also look at these TV products and ask how they circulate, and if there are, I'm not sure what specific questions you have, like those overall research questions for the project, but I thought that maybe that could be some collaboration there as well in those terms. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I answer that, but maybe Sylvie has ideas too. But this is a very, very important question, and thank you so much. Actually, there are many aspects of the whole process that we are missing. I realize when we are focusing on the production, but not on the. There are many aspects of these productions that we are not really anyway focusing on. For example, we are working on interactions between intelligence agencies and showrunners, but we don't work really on the production itself. I mean, the commercial aspect, even if everything is connected. So this is also missing. We are then working on we're trying to work on the work itself, whatever that means, but analyzing images and narratives and so on. And we're interested in reception, and we're right now making this kind of field work. Actually, it's not easy with the confinement, but we are using the students of our universities, which is a very easy thing to do online. So, but it's only a small part of the audience. Obviously, we cannot organize the town hall meetings where we would. So many things are missing. But what you are mentioning, the distribution, which is actually very important in film, but also in TV. But maybe the question is not. I know it's very important, and we're not doing this. We have to. But you give me a very good idea, because we should get in touch with the producers. But the difference with film is that we don't have this kind of circuit of theaters and producers, and because in TV, in these TV shows like Canal Plus, who does the Bureau, and I'm very happy everybody likes this show, but they do it and they broadcast it. I mean, we have for these shows, and this is how all these also cable networks work. You have this kind of direct transmission from the producer to the audience, and this is also part. I think this is also part of the aesthetics. It's not only a commercial, an empirical commercial thing. It's really part of the product and the aesthetics of the product, I think, because it's also a kind of image, like the Bureau is also the flagship of Canal Plus and so on, and Homeland and 24, where 24 was very important for Fox, and so this is what has to be studied, because the problems are different from film, but maybe this is the connection to the network, which is both the producer and the diffuser, the broadcaster, and I think same with Netflix or other. So thank you. This is a very important insight.
Now, indeed, if I may add something, it's indeed something we didn't mention, as far as I can say, explicitly in our discussions in DEMOSERIES, and I think it's an important aspect. I'm not sure if it should be considered as it's in between the production, like the first work package, the one on which Pauline focused, but also is it more the reception package? But where I think it is indeed a very interesting aspect to dig in is because of who and who watches the shows on the planet, in which countries these various shows are seen. And I think something which we would like, and this we already discussed, we would like to dig in, and so it involves looking at the distribution, the world distribution, is how, to give an example, how so we have a possible relationship with Egypt, for example, how Egyptians, so do these shows are broadcast in Egypt? Which shows are broadcast, and what is the reaction of people living in Egypt or even in Syria and all these countries which are so non-Western countries which are portrayed in these shows, and how do people react to the to these stories? So I think it's a very important point, even though our focus is on democracies, but also, as Pauline mentioned, we are focused on a few countries actually, and but it's also interesting even for the Europe to understand. So I'm happy to hear that Le Bureau has been broadcast in Finland, if I remember well, but is it sold in other European countries, and how other European countries react to Le Bureau or these other shows? So I think it's a very interesting point. For us, it's not only the countries which produce, even if we focus on democracies, it's not only the democratic countries which produce these shows that are interesting, but also all the democratic countries, even those who don't have a big production on TV security shows. I think there is indeed something to look into more deeply.
Nice. So Daniel raised his hand for a while also.
Yeah, from the beginning, sorry.
It's just fascinating to listen to all of this. I'm sorry I was slightly late, so if I ask something that was said before, maybe just say, the first thing to say is I'm sad I haven't seen Le Bureau, because now I feel I'm the only one who hasn't seen it. Maybe I should catch up with it. But I can say maybe a couple of things in terms of the looking at the films themselves and the content analysis aspect of the project, because that's far closer to my own work. In my mind, one of the things that, alluding to what Max mentioned earlier about genre and also family resemblance, is also, I think, one fruitful way to look at this is by saying, well, there is something that we intuitively know that binds these shows together, no? But it's not necessarily clear that we can just disaggregate it, no? So we could also say, well, there are certain plots, tropes were mentioned, narrative tropes. Sometimes even the people involved in doing these shows are hired because they have done previous similar shows. And so there is an element of that as well. But at the same time, one of the promises of doing this with quantitative or computational, rather, I should say, methods is also probably the idea that we can find ways in which these shows are bound together that we didn't know before, or that did not fit necessarily with a previous idea of genre, for example. And to this, I think it might be useful to think of this problem as finding or trying to locate or map taste communities, no? Which is very much, I think, Sylvie, you're right in saying that is very much on the sense of how these shows are used by the people who use them. And I say use in a very, use is not the right word, no, because they're watched, but they're also then talked about, and they're also, now they're produced, they're distributed, but they're also later, they kind of engender a life of their own. And I think this dynamic is interesting, but also quite complex. So you think some time back, no, especially with big budget films or really popular shows, the shows sometimes create the realities that they portray. So the classic example for this is kind of close to, I'm from Mexico, so I'm kind of close to this idea, no? So when the James Bond film that was set in Mexico had this huge Day of the Dead parade, that didn't exist, no? That had never happened before in the country, was a completely fictional thing. So I was quite happy when Pauline mentioned this idea of not opposing reality to fiction necessarily, you know, so no, that didn't happen. And then after the film was made and seen and everything, the government decided to throw the parade. So this is an example of how these shows have a real impact and a very real, they contribute to create the reality, the fiction that they portray, no, in a different sense. To me, it would be very interesting to try to plot that or map that as a cultural dynamic, or if it's at all possible, no? But sorry, I'm trying to get many things on the same thing, but just to go back to the idea of content analysis, I also think, Sylvie, you're very right, at least in my experience, in intuitively saying that it might be a bit superficial, in the sense that it might not pick up on the nuance of that regular human watchers would have, no, when watching these shows, the interaction between characters, and all of this is really difficult to model, and in my experience anyway, to machine see these programs is not with out of the box tools doesn't always yield very promising results. So I think that for us, one of the really interesting things that probably you could do with us is that we could probably try to figure out how to make these machines or these computational systems find the things that you're interested in finding. So there is an element of that's where I feel the collaboration could be very interesting. So you mentioned, for example, freedom, ideas of freedom in the stories, or ideas of, and there are specific ways of portraying this in images, no? And if we could come up with a good model of that, then we can maybe have a system that can machine watch your whole series, the whole series, looking for something specific. Now, just to finish off the thing, it also depends on how many you have, because I think it's also a matter of economics. Developing this might be too complex or too expensive to do for a small corpus. It pays off to do it with a larger collection, and I think the results would also be a lot better with a larger. The larger the collection, the better. So this is, to go back to the beginning, I probably missed when you said how many you're looking at and how big is the collection. So that's it. I'll wrap up with that. Sorry, I talked for a long time.
I'd like to add a point. Thank you very much. This is exactly what the kind of thoughts I would like to sort of get into.
Yes, thank you so much. This is very exciting.
And so the key thing is, like, this may actually entail that we think together, right? And the quantitative analysis typically needs much more data. Like I had a lucky incident in my life where I ended up being a co-author on a physical review letters paper where we started with art history, and in the end, the art history was not part of that paper anymore because we didn't have enough data, but the phenomenon was sort of more general and ubiquitous. And I think there may be something similar going on. And I'd like to connect what Daniel just said back to this issue of co-constitution of fiction and reality. I think this is super important, right? So we all have these kind of cell phones because of Star Trek, and we have video telephony because of 2001 Odyssey in Space, arguably. There's lots of things that are sort of like anticipated in that kind of way, right? So for those of us who read Wallpaper in the 1990s, where the chief editor, Tyler Brill, made this kind of trend analytic kind of anticipation that he said in 2005, 2010, it may be that all over Europe run around in ruggedized clothing and have like a kind of militaristic style in their cars and stuff like that. And we were shivering when we read that first. It was like, wow, this is like so awful, right? Like we really don't want to have that. And like, that's exactly where we are. Like people, like, you know, you walk down the street in Munich and people have a kind of military jeep with a baby seat in the back, and they basically have the platform where you can like mount the MG or the gun or the camera on top, and it's sort of hip to have something like that in a posh neighborhood, which obviously goes well with the kind of iconography of such TV series, right? So there's a kind of thing where at the same time we want to prevent terrorism, and at the same time this iconography breeds itself. Like James Bond is a good example, right? Like this kind of, where there's so many of these James Bond style cars now out there that sort of, you know, speak to the audience like, look, this is a super fast car that you can chase somebody. Look, this is a car you can actually shoot at and it doesn't really happen something. But then the key thing is we're living in a society where, you know, the speed limit is like 50 kilometers per hour in town and like 90 kilometers per hour over here, or 100 kilometers per hour outside of town. So you don't really need that. But at the same time, we sort of like have this feedback loop with the entertainment industry where more and more of this kind of iconography is sort of being built. And it is both fiction and reality at the same time. If you drive down the street in Texas, about 90% of all the cars you see are basically realized fiction. And so, so this is why I'm very interested in this kind of interplay between the two things, how much fiction is reality and how realistic is fiction is sort of can only be treated in this co-constitutive way. And this may actually be something which we can capture with methods such as yours and the methods that Daniel just outlined and bring them together basically in one package to actually describe the process. And so that's sort of like a long-term dream, but I do think that this is sort of, you know, a kind of art history galore. It is possible, I think. And so the question is now, how concretely, what would our corpus be? I think that's a question I actually would like to throw back to Daniel. Could you think of a corpus? How much do we actually need? Would it be all the frames of the TV series demo series is looking at? Would it be a much broader kind of corpus or a much more targeted corpus that actually looks for particular things? Like what would be from our side and from the demo series side be the desired data set we really would like to have in a very ideal world where we could have all the data we want to have in essence? So maybe Daniel can speak a little bit to that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. We'll probably need a much longer meeting for this sort of thing, but I also feel that
we'll have other meetings.
But off the top of my head, I mean, so for example, I think television is I find it a good testing ground as well. I worked in previous things with films, but I think TV has a great advantage, which is that it has many more programs. So you have like one series and then you'll have many episodes, no? Usually it's an episodic sort of. So I did a little, some clustering some time ago with Game of Thrones, just because there's a lot of material there. It's a single series, but it has a lot of, you know, it's 8 seasons spanning like, I don't know, like whatever, 10 years or something. And it has a lot of material. So I think it can, and I know, for example, some people in the US that are doing things with popular sitcoms, like I Love Jeannie, I think is one of the ones that they like this idea of having so many episodes that they can work with. So in my mind, there is kind of maybe a couple of ways of going about it. So if you have as many, obviously from a kind of machine learning perspective, the more you have, the better, no? But there is another way of doing it, which might be saying, well, if we don't have as much in terms of an archive, but we can also supplement that with a lot of annotation. So this is kind of the opposite. So you could have more densely annotated things in order to deploy these tools, no? And the one thing that perhaps is not what Max asked, but I will say it anyway, is that this idea of how people watch things in other parts of the world, it's to me super interesting, because we can think, for example, of an experimental setup in which we have people from specific countries that you already identify watch clips from specific shows that you've already identified, and then we can compare how they're seeing is encoded in different ways depending on where they see these things. This could be done, for example, presumably with a setup with Amazon Mechanical Turk or with other sorts of similar crowdsourcing of watching, say. So we train a specific classifier or a specific system, a specific model to do this using loads of annotations from people from around the world. Now, I'm obviously speaking about a very large project and very large things, and without any idea of the budget for any of this, but in an ideal world, this could be done, and I think it is one of the promises of this type of techniques, is not necessarily to have like a thing that can watch just as well as us or as a human or as a general vision sort of thing, but actually localized vision, like localized also, more specific ways in which specific peoples watch specific shows. And this in itself is also super interesting, because it would allow to compare, which I feel is something that might be interesting to your project as well, this comparison. So I'm sorry, I have a very long way of not answering the question exactly, but because I don't know. Or no, this is just ideas.
I'd like to add that just because the goal is large does not mean we shouldn't do it, because one of our main missions in the CUDAN project is sustaining cultural data analytics, and particularly the CUDAN project, which means coming up with funding applications where we say, okay, let's develop the idea, let's split it into doable chunks, and then basically spawn projects is actually a really desired goal. And like, there's nothing better than to get in more money to actually do these kind of things. And so we can be this ideal laboratory in essence. And one thing which I would like also, like to the thing where you didn't answer my question, but in a sense you touched on something really, really interesting, is I like to also transcend in the quantitative research these kind of convenient macroeconomic buckets, right? Like nations. Like if you say, ask people in different parts of the world, like what are we actually talking about? Like there's people in Israel, which somebody in France is much more similar to than the guy next door in the apartment, either in Israel or in France, right? So that is a really interesting thing to also take into account. Like, how do different people watch these things is, I think, really, really important, because if somebody likes guns, they will probably watch it in a different way than somebody who actually would like to have world peace and nobody having a gun. So that's like, and those people exist both in Israel and in France, right? And so that is a really interesting thing, I think, to take into account. It can also be put into question, like, is there really such a thing as, say, a French security TV show versus a British security TV show? And, you know, is there really such a thing? Obviously, on the surface, yes. But it's like nationalism, right? How is Marine Le Pen different from whatever's going on here in this country? Is a really interesting question, right? So if we always stay with the buckets, then we will only have these kind of differences and we'll never see the similarities, and vice versa. If you talk about similar topics and similarity fields where there may be differences that we don't spot because we never sort of disambiguate, then we have the same issue. So in some sense, within this realm of security TV series, the same questions appear all over cultural history, where you can ask yourself, oh, does it make sense to split art history into periods? Does it make sense to split art history into countries, schools, and stuff like that? Does it make sense to split art into genres like painting, architecture, and sculpture? So that is something in a small form, all reappearing. And that sort of like begs the question, as Daniel says, what should be the scale of our tools? Should I look at all frames ever shown on TV? Should I only look at security TV series? Or should I look at one particular episode of a TV series? Which may totally be also the case, that it is feasible, right? So, yeah. So Sylvie raised her hand.
Yes, I have. I had many ideas listening to you, so I don't know if I have. I noted some of them, but one thing to answer Daniel's suggestion. So if I understood well, we thought of these kinds of protocols, like to get some material to project, to show clips, as you said, and then try to elicit some reactions. I think it's a very interesting thing to do. The problem is that if, I mean, to answer Max's question about what we would like to do ideally, one of the points we advocate with Sandra is that the very point of the TV series, the TV shows, the series, is that it's a long, it's usually it's a long involvement. It lasts several years. You watch this and it mingles with your life. You make like imaginary friends with some characters, and they're friends also to your friends in real life. And so we think that this aspect has an important effect on the way people relate to series and on the way people understand security questions when they learn them through TV shows. And so ideally, we would need to have people watching the whole shows in an experimental setting, so as to be able to understand how these series impact them. And even more ideally, I don't know if you have this kind of tools. There have been some neurologic analysis to see how reading fiction, watching fiction impact people from a neurological point of view. So, and I think it's really, really ideal, and I'm not sure it would be possible, and it would raise ethical questions. So that we have this very problem that TV series are very long usually, and they also interact one with another. So first point. Second point, I wanted to give you an example of the kinds of question I asked myself. Actually, yesterday I watched the final episode of the season 5 of Homeland. And it's also a discussion we already had with Theo, how enemies are portrayed in these security TV shows. And I thought 24, the TV shows, which has been heavily criticized as being supporting Bush's politics. I think, and to be sorry, 24 has been criticized as portraying Arabs in a very bad way, but I don't agree, because when compared with this season 4 of Homeland, I think very often in 24, enemies, terrorists, are portrayed in a way I, as an individual, can relate to them. And I think to come back to Sandra's goal, ultimate goal, and I think it's a very important aspect of fighting against terrorists, to try to, in a way or another, understand what they think. It's one of my main personal question about terrorists, what happened into their heads. And I have not chance, as far as I know, to know a terrorist. So fiction is a way of trying to understand something. But I thought in Homeland, so season 4, the terrorist was interesting to begin with, and then he acts at some point in a very barbaric way, and irrational barbaric way. And for me it was, but maybe it's because I'm in my own culture. For me it was irrational and caricatural, and I thought it's not a good way to portray. I mean, it's not a way for helping me to understand what to be a terrorist means. And so this, but it's my own perception. Maybe I'm wrong, and people usually think the opposite, that Homeland is portrays terrorists in a or are more lenient, or are more I don't know, realist with portraying terrorists. So this is the kind, I wanted to give you a question. So I thought it would be, I don't know So how do we do with that? So do we just watch the show and share our feelings to decide on how various enemies are portrayed? Some are motivated by vengeance, some are by money, some because they are religious fanatics. And so how do we organize these various portraits of enemies? Are we based on personal feelings, or can we use some kind of objective analytic tools to try and see how various enemies are portrayed in various shows, maybe according to the period, maybe according to the countries? I would have examples.
Can I enter here? Okay, I might be very chaotic explaining this, but now you touched some points that I was like, okay, I mean, okay, I'm Catalan. First I have to explain. Last terrorist group was from Spain, ETA, but I have this thing that my cousin, like a female, she's being charged by terrorism right now. Now, I'm saying now. And it was in TV last week in an interview in the Catalan TV. This, I think, is a made-up thing. We Catalans, we are trying to fight for our independence, and the Spain, they were, like, actually I'm from a town outside Barcelona, and there was this resolution of all the government going to jail, and the same day they made up this thing that they found some terrorists in Catalonia, and then one of them was not my cousin at the time, but somehow she had an affair. I mean, she was married, but she had an affair with someone, which was this one that was actually catched by being charged, and after some months, that was like last September, and after some months in June, she received that she's also being charged now of terrorism. Yeah, and actually just last week was in main TV on Saturday night in the more seen broadcast in Catalonia, in TV3, like TV3, was an interview to her, Esther Canet, which I am Mark Canet, and yeah, I mean, what you are explaining just is like, I know, because I've seen and seen myself in my own face, and well, but the terms of terrorism, at least in a Spain perspective, is being tweaked. I mean, there is one musician in Brussels trying to be called back to Spain, charged of terrorism by doing songs, and even Puigdemont, the previous president, is actually trying to be caught back I mean, I think he's not in terrorism, but anyway, the terms of terrorism, because they actually had this I mean, you had the Euro orders, like these things between states to bring back people. There is one checkpoint very easy, that if you put terrorism, it's just like they bring back to Spain, easy. Spain is being pending this idea of terrorism. And in the Catalan case, these guys, they're actually trying to charge terrorism. And with a very naggy thing, that is that they say they have precursors of explosives, which precursors of explosives can be actually soap in your place. Because you can have like the cleaning products that if you refine, you could eventually do something. And anyway, we will see what happened. Already one Catalan was charged by terrorism, and 1 week ago was discharged by terrorism with no proof whatsoever, but he was trying to be charged as terrorism.
I'm glad we got to the topic of security studies. I wanted to bring it up that we haven't focused on that, but it's might be quite interesting. Actually, well, I first saw that it actually has connection with the cultural semiotics, because I don't know much about security studies, but the Copenhagen school has been connected with this Lotmanian and so on approach to security studies, and also how the cultural other and also how the enemy is depicted. So this has been looked into from semiotic aspect. But what I wanted to stress was that this connection between the cultural semiotic security studies, what little I know of it, was that this one stressed the affective aspect. So it had to do with this affective turn and emotions and the idea of fear, for example. So how is, the question would be raised that how is this fear depicted in that case? And fear is like one of these, as emotion is just one of these biases that would affect like any cultural transmission of cultural phenomena, and it's important for us also, I believe. So, and of course, the security studies, I believe it has to do with actually a large range of topics, like you would take this fake news and bots and hacking, and but also stuff like pseudo history, like Mila deals with. So actually, the security studies is also interesting, and especially from the affectivity standpoint, I would say. And you could also go to so what could you, how would you analyze it? And you could do perhaps go to the sentiment analysis, whether it is the dialogue or is it the faces in there, etc. So, of course, if you want to comment at how important is this affectivity aspect for you, you could.
Actually, I'm very happy about this whole discussion. I'm sorry we don't have much time, so it really means that we have to go on with this. Really about security studies, this is really part of the project, and we have also a cooperation with not Copenhagen actually, yes, a center of security studies, and also this whole critical security studies, which is something we are very much interested in, because obviously the name security shows come from security studies. I mean, it's really the same concept of security, and this is something that we really plan to discuss. It's a very important part of the project to include the study of these shows into the security studies, because more or less they are part of the conversation of security and on security. And also what you mentioned about the problem about using the word terrorism is something that is really part of this whole discussion. And our project is called DEMOSERIES, and you can check on the website. It's not a terrorist series, so it's really about how democracy is threatened, both by some kind of terrorist action, but also the fact that all kinds of people can be called terrorists, like, you know, Trump calling terrorists the people who are demonstrating, which is always a tendency in some kind of political power. So this whole discussion about what terrorism actually is and how the term is used is also something that is very present in the shows. I mean, if you read, too intellectual. If you see Homeland, for example, or other shows, you can see some political moments where some people are called terrorists, just, you know, for some reason. So I think all these shows are very smart and kind of having themselves a deep reflections about all these questions. And about the affective thing, it's of course completely central. It's that, as I said at the beginning, we are not having any, you know, analysis, empirical study of the reactions of the people who are watching the shows. It might be interesting, but we cannot do everything. And we find it more interesting to study this affective dimension in the aesthetics, I think, in the aesthetics itself, and also in what people say about the shows. So there's some kind of analysis of the reactions. But obviously, for example, these shows couldn't convey what they want if they were not some affective reactions, not only about what's happening, but also the kind of, what is very central in these shows is the kind of attachment, involvement we have in the characters. You know, when the Bureau des Légendes stopped after this 5th season, everybody was complaining about the fact that we didn't know what was happening to this or that character, and that's terrible. Or when, you know, about Game of Thrones, when the last season, when the audience was always complaining about what was happening and disagreeing about the ending. And this is really an expression of an affective involvement in the people, the character, in the story. And this is very, really essential, I think, to the TV series medium. And we have to take this into account.
Thank you very much.
There are many more things to say, so maybe we could try to, you know, schedule a meeting and discuss only one of the points, because we could.
Yes. So as always, thank you very much. We unfortunately ran out of time. This was amazing, actually. I think, as always, I'm encouraging everybody to return and attend future seminars. And the idea is obviously, you know, not only from our side, but as I said, these seminars are open, so you can join every week. And it would be great if you, if both of our sides could sort of like mingle on an individual basis, co-develop idea. If we have an idea, this can be short term, it can be longer term. When you have, oh, there was this idea, which I think the demo series people would be interested in, then let's hook up together. So that's basically sort of the idea that is underlying this. There's no question that this, I think, in what we talked about today is super relevant in this world. We haven't touched on a lot of things like, for example, what's happening in the US with the police violence and the police television series that we are exposed to since decades. We haven't talked about the fact how this reality and fiction thing plays out in reality, like we just talked to Trump voters. And so, having personally lived in a neighborhood that has 80% Trump voters, I can tell you the probability that in this room now there would be 48% Trump voters in the US would be 100%. They look like you and I. They're very regular. They, you know, they vote for Trump because they go to church and they think the Democrats are not religious enough. They vote for Donald Trump because he looks good on TV. I don't know where this is coming from. They vote for Donald Trump because he gives them health insurance, even though they're Mexican, and they get the health insurance by working at camps at the border. I have met such people. And so this kind of question of what is reality and what is fiction is super important, because indeed the society we grew up with is threatened and a lot, right? It could actually last another 4 weeks or not. And so let's hope that the Americans do the right decision and not vote for Donald Trump again. And let's do our job and understand what's going on with reality and fiction and TV series and other forms of culture. So thank you very much, everybody. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes.
Yes. Our last comment, next week we're gonna meet another lab from Nanjing University. They have a digital humanities center there, and we're gonna talk to 5 professors. What are they doing in terms of digital humanities in China? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.